name is Ed King. This is part three of my series documenting my surgery and subsequent recovery from an acoustic neuroma. Today's topic is vertigo, talking about balance issues, dizziness, things of that nature. I'd also like to note today is the first full month since my surgery. So it's been 4 weeks, and I wanted to talk about pretty much what that's been like as well. So first and foremost, let's discuss the vertigo. So what is vertigo? Well, vertigo is a loss of balance and dizziness, room spinning and things of that nature. That's not really related to things externally. So it's not like I'm drunk or anything like that. I just have a loss of balance as related to the surgery, specifically the nerves that are in my brain for balance. So prior to the surgery, about 2 weeks out, we had just gotten back from Germany, and I experienced a little bit of dizziness there, but it wasn't bad at all. It was one quick bout that lasted 30 seconds. But after coming back, I was at work and was at my desk and noticed, I'm getting kind of dizzy and it's not going away. And so I decided, what, I need to lay down on the floor until this recovers. And I was down on the floor for probably about 30 minutes or so, and it wasn't going away. And my wife ended up coming and picking me up from work. Thankfully, I had a doctor's appointment the next day, and they were able to see, that I was dizzy as well, and tried to go back to work on Thursday, but it just wasn't happening. I was still way too dizzy to be able to be functional, and so they ended up putting me on short-term disability because of it. And it was smart to do so. I was a liability for the company, and it just wasn't smart for me to attempt to work under that kind of condition. So when it came down to it, the nerve was just damaged beyond repair, and so the doctors ended up removing it as part of the surgery. And I basically requested that they do that. I knew that it was not going to be pretty, and I knew that there wasn't going to be much to recover, but it was pretty banged up. So I had the surgery, and my vertigo, because they basically snipped the nerve, just increased tenfold. The first day or so, the room was a little spinny, and when I was sitting still, even, which is wasn't the normal. And whenever I would sit up and move my head, it was really, really bad. But eventually that subsided a bit. And after the second day, it was pretty much what it is today. If I stand up, or if I turn my head too suddenly right or left, up or down, what I notice is that just it's not that everything is spinning. It's more of a bobblehead kind of feeling. If I focus on something in the distance, I can see that it kind of just bounces. It's a really weird experience. I can't really describe it. So again, it's been a month since the operation, and I really haven't seen any signs of improvement. If anything, last Friday, I noticed that it got worse. Whereas I was able to sit up before, out of bed, or stand up from a chair, and it wasn't, the room didn't spin, and all of a sudden the room was spinning again, just like when I just came out of surgery. So I emailed the doctor, and the doctor said, well, this is kind of normal. You're still healing, and it's going to take a while. So, I can see that. It makes sense. And I trust the doctor's judgment on this particular, scenario. So, let's see. Kind of lost my place here. I'm okay for the most part, while the eyes are open. And if I'm still or if I'm laying in bed, um, everything's fine. It's specifically when I get up or move my head in any given direction, like this makes me dizzy right now. It it's really difficult. Um, if I'm walking long distances, especially, I really need to have a cane or something like that to help me, keep balance. It really makes a big difference. In the house, it's not so bad. Um, so let's talk about walking with a cane. So when I walked around the apartment when we first got home from the hospital, I was using the cane going everywhere, and I didn't feel safe really without it. Mostly because I didn't really know what to expect. I eventually did get used to the balance, and the way I've been describing it to people is it's like someone who's drunk, and or just an alcoholic in general. It's not that they operate better when drunk. It's just that they're so used to being drunk that they can come off as being normal. I think there was even a Law and Order episode that covered this at one point. Um, so, people perceive that I'm getting better because I'm not using a cane in the apartment anymore. And the answer is no, not really. It's just I'm I've been doing this for so long at this point, basically a month and a half, that I'm just kind of used to the dizziness and the balance issues, and I kind of know what to expect. So I feel more confident in my ability to walk around and not fall down. But going long distances, if I'm going for a walk outside of the apartment, I still bring the cane with. Um, so on my first physical therapy visit, which was 2 weeks, yeah, 2 weeks after the surgery, um, the physical therapist, showed me some exercises to do, and maybe set the cane aside and walk around without it, and that really increased my confidence quite a bit. I realized that my balance isn't related to my muscles. My muscles understand what they're supposed to do. It's just, pretty much it's all up in here. So it made me more confident, especially walking around the apartment. And I really focused and forced myself to stop using the cane as much as possible. I was also given some exercises to help with the balance while at home. The first set of exercises had me standing and pretending like I was in an analog clock where 12 o'clock is in front of me, 6 o'clock is behind, 3 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. And I'm supposed to step in certain directions, like take my right foot and step 5 times to 12 o'clock, and then step 5 times to 6 o'clock, and so forth. I've had subsequent physical therapy sessions since then, and I'll get into that after a bit. But for the most part, I'm walking around inside the home um, under my own power. I don't use a cane anymore, but I am still dizzy. Um, Something I've learned as part of this is that um, it takes a lot of coordination and effort to deal with balance. And what I've discovered is that you can overdo it very, very easily. So riding in a car is a really good example. So when it comes to balance, you tend to focus on something in a distance, and that gives you a point of reference, and your body kind of knows where you're at. So riding in a car is actually very difficult because those points are constantly moving, especially if you're looking out to the side. That's nearly impossible for me. So I'm trying to focus on something from the distance, and then that thing just kind of passes you up, and then you got to focus on something else, and then you pass that up, and so you're constantly focusing on the next thing, and that's a bit tiring. And then the bumps, and because what I'm dealing with is dizziness and this bobble-headed thing that I explained before, it's really difficult because you're constantly doing this in a car, and you don't realize it. And by the time I was done with my first car ride, I was near tears. Not so much that I was in pain, it was just I was not coordinated. my body was just exhausted from just trying to keep up with just everything that was going on. I was both physically and mentally exhausted, and came home and slept for hours just because I was riding in a car, and we didn't even go far, and we weren't even gone that long, 3 hours tops. Um, so the next day, especially after that ride, it was pretty much a recovery day, and I didn't feel like I had the energy to get up. I was trying to do stuff, but it was just exhausting. And so what I learned is when I go out, and it doesn't even have to be really that far. I've just discovered that I have to know my limits and not to overdo those limits. I understand when I'm getting tired, and just tell people, you know what, it's time to go. So let's head on out. Um, so now let's talk about physical therapy. So this is kind of interesting because they're telling you that you need to push yourself. So going out and doing stuff is important. Even though you are dizzy and it's hard to focus and it makes you really tired, you want to push yourself. This is how your brain learns and copes, and the right side eventually takes over for the left, or the left takes over for the right, depending on your situation. But it's also important, like I said beforehand, to know what your limits are and to understand when your body is telling you stop, no more. You don't want to exhaust yourself, which obviously I did that first car trip. The next item with physical therapy is, so they're having you do lots of interesting exercises just to try to get your brain to realize, you know what, I don't have this side to count on anymore. And so what they're telling you to do is, for example, they have you heel to toe with your foot, where you have one foot behind and meeting the toes meeting the heel of the other. And they say that any person who's healthy should be able to stand heel to toe for 30 seconds and be perfectly balanced and not fall down. And so I can do that without problem. I can focus on something and stay up for 30 seconds, and both sides. I'm a little wobbly, but I can keep it up, no problems. The trick is closing your eyes. So they want me to get up to 15 seconds, which is half of the 30 seconds, of course, but they want me to stay for 15 seconds, perfectly balanced, and not fall down. I get, at best, 6 seconds. I cheated one day and lowered my center of gravity quite a bit, and was able to get to 10 seconds, but again, I was cheating, and just to see if I could do it, really, but it really wasn't the proper way of doing it. I'd say on average I'm doing between 3 to 6 seconds, and also depending on the side. If my left foot is in behind, I tend to fall towards my left side, and I usually am between 3 and 4 seconds there. If my right foot is in back, then I'm generally bouncing towards the right side, and I can get closer to 6 seconds at that point. The second exercise is standing on one leg, and I'm told that you can expect to get about 15 seconds on average for someone who's perfectly healthy. I'm averaging 3 seconds, maybe, if I'm lucky, and it's incredibly difficult to even meet that 3 seconds. I am just wobbly like crazy, and usually end up falling one side or another, and usually it's to my left side, and I really feel like I have to lean a lot to my right side in order to not fall to the left. It's just a really odd feeling experience. But when it comes down to the physical therapy, it's important to be safe. So at the foot of my bed, which is directly behind me here, I have a dresser and the bed, and I can touch both with my hands easily. And so if I feel like I'm going to go in one direction, I can, I'm usually about an inch away on both sides, and I can catch myself fairly easily, so it's really safe. I don't recommend doing it out in the open, because if there's nothing to catch you, you can fall very, very easily, especially if you're, trying to balance on one leg. Um, so that pretty much covers physical therapy. It is exhausting. By the time I'm done, I'm pretty much wiped out, and I have to lay down for a bit. I never would have guessed just how mentally and physically taxing just trying to stand on one leg could ever possibly be. So, bathing. So obviously, if everything is just spinning or you're trying to, stand up, especially in a situation that requires you to move your head around a lot, bathing is kind of difficult. The first 2 weeks, I could not shower by myself. I just didn't feel safe at all. So luckily, we have a shower that has a seat in it, and so my wife and I would get in the shower together, and she would just bathe me, and it made it really easy. But things like, I mean, things you just would never consider, like shampooing your head, um, causes you to move your head so much that you just get just, well, not really sick. I can't say that I ever got nauseous from it, but it just really wore me out. Just even a shower, you would never guess. So I would do things just to try to keep my head as still as possible, even while trying to put shampoo in my hair. Um, Eventually, though, after 2 weeks, I got up the nerve to get in the shower on my own and try to get myself clean. And the trick that I've learned is you just need to know where you're at. And once your brain understands where you're at and you're not going to fall down, it gets significantly better. So what I've learned is that if I plant my feet in certain locations, push my leg against the wall, there's a little ledge right about elbow height for me, and just kind of position myself so or my brain always knows where I'm at, even with my eyes open or closed. It makes it significantly better and significantly easier to shower. Getting soap in your hair requires, of course, for you to close your eyes, and that's when it gets tricky. So, especially, people, I'm sure, are used to using two hands, to wash their hair. I have to get out of that habit and just keep my hand planted on the ledge and keep my foot planted so I know where I'm at and just try to wash my hair with one hand. It was definitely tricky the first time that I did it. It's gotten better as I've gotten used to doing it, but by the time it's said and done, it's just I'm exhausted mostly for the fact that I'm trying to keep my head still and positioned, and then rinsing your hair off under the water, and trying not to get soap in my eyes, and just trying to concentrate and not fall down in the shower is just exhausting. So by the time I come out, I just want to lay down for a bit. Um, but really, when it comes to being in the shower, knowing where you are at all times makes all the difference in the world, especially for those points where you have to close your eyes. So, become familiar prior to taking a shower where things are, and know where you can reach, because you will get dizzy and you will need to reach for something at a certain point just to balance yourself while you're in the shower. Um, Another thing when it comes to hygiene is brushing your teeth. Again, one of those things you don't even think about prior to getting dizzy and having balance issues. Putting a toothbrush into your mouth is one thing, but actually starting to brush is incredibly difficult because you're causing your head to bounce around and move around, and just doing this makes me dizzy. So what I've started doing is I make sure that I lower my center of balance as much as possible. If I can, or if Amanda is available, I'll bring a stool in and sit on it, and that helps. And I'll grasp the edge of the sink as part of the balancing act. And then we'll brush my teeth. It just makes me dizzy. There's nothing I could do about it. But, good hygiene is important, of course, especially when you're recovering. And so I make sure that I go at it and make myself dizzy. I'll lay down after the fact. It's fine. One thing I should note, especially with facial weakness, is spitting, it becomes more difficult. I really can't spit anymore. Everything just kind of falls out of the mouth instead of spitting. So it makes things like rinsing very difficult. It also makes things like using mouthwash difficult. So you really have to concentrate. Otherwise, you will either drool or you'll spit inadvertently out of your mouth. So the last item I wanted to cover is getting used to dizziness. So as I mentioned before, the symptoms really haven't improved. Everything that I've read states that it will, and there's no reason to ever doubt that. Lots of people have gone through this, lots of people have recovered, but it's only been a month, and I have to constantly remind myself it's only been a month. So it could take several months. It could take even longer than that. That bothers me, of course, because I do not like to be idle, and it's the dizziness out of anything that will prevent me from doing a lot of things that I enjoy doing. For example, sitting in front of a computer or playing a video game is very difficult because the screen moves and you got to kind of move along with it, and that makes you dizzy. Watching television, especially if there's a lot of movement, you move your head around, that makes you dizzy. You kind of get used to it after a period of time, but for me at this point, 4 months or 4 weeks in, it's not any better. It hasn't gone away. As I mentioned before, it's akin to a drunkard, someone who drinks all the time, just getting used to being that kind of drunk or being drunk on a certain level, and they look functional from the outside, but they're drunk, and it's kind of the same. If you look at me, you can't tell that I'm dizzy. You can't really see what's happening on the inside, but when from my perspective, everyth's a bobblehead, or every once in a while I just get really dizzy and I have to lay down, and there's not a whole heck of a lot that I can do about that. Before I end this, I do want to mention a positive note. In my other videos, you can very easily see the facial weakness that I have been experiencing, especially with my eye. And I noticed this morning that when I blink rapidly, I can actually feel my eye closing in a more normal manner instead of it mostly staying open all the time. And so it's actually easier for me to open and close my eyes, which means I'm not dealing with the dry eye today nearly as much as what I have been in the past couple of weeks, which is really nice. So my next video will actually be covering facial weakness and how I've been dealing with that, because it's definitely an emotional thing as well as a physical thing. And so I look forward to discussing that and getting feedback. So thank you very much, and I will hopefully have the next video out in a couple of days. Thank you.